This is Doug DeMuro, and today I'm going to discuss my 7 favorite cars I have ever owned. I have now owned 31 cars in my lifetime, which is obviously a lot, too much, in fact. And I've had a few favorites over the years, and today I'm going to tell you which ones I liked more than all the others. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era. We've had some great sales recently on Cars and Bids, including this Acura NSX Original Beautiful, sold for $81,000, a fantastic sale for a great car. This armored Land Rover Defender, which was tremendously quirky, sold for $40,000, and this 2015 Porsche Cayman S sold for $64,500, a great result for a great car. If you're looking to sell your cool car from the modern era, Cars and Bids is the place to do it. And if you're looking to buy a cool car from the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids has daily auctions and amazing selection at carsandbids.com. Okay, so let's talk favorite cars. I made a video a couple of years ago on my second channel, More Doug DeMuro, where I went through all the cars I have ever owned. And so if you're curious about all of them, you can check out that video and see like which ones I'm choosing here over some of the others. And I'll link that in the description below. But today I'm going to pick from those 31 cars I have owned, my top 7, 3 of which I sold, and I wish I never had. And so let's get started. With number 7, my 7th favorite car I've ever owned, that would be my 1995 Range Rover Classic. This is objectively not that great of a car. It was slow, it was horribly unreliable during the time I owned it. It was a bit of a disaster of a car, but it looked insanely cool, and values have shot up for Range Rover Classics over the last couple of years, and mine was like a great one. It was a well-restored 95 final model year with the dashboard with an airbag, the only year they did that. It was a really nice car in green, the Range Rover Classic color, you know, and it was just a cool car. And I enjoyed driving it around, having that sort of old school Range Rover feel, and I sold it because it was just such an unreliable disaster of a car. But in retrospect, now knowing that it's probably worth about 3 times what I sold it for now, you know, I wish I had kept it and just kind of kept it going and running. And now, honestly, every time I see a Range Rover Classic on the street, I'm a little jealous. I look and I'm like, wow, it actually kind of looks pretty cool. I sold that in 2012, and as SUV design has grown even curvier and even more crossover-ier and less SUV-like and more car-like, that Range Rover Classic, there's an appeal that's kind of lost there in modern cars, and I miss it more and more. Okay, next up, my 6th favorite car I have ever owned, that would be my 2001 Mercedes E55 AMG. This is an unusual one. You don't hear too many people talking about these cars, the W210. This was the first E-AMG that Mercedes ever really sold in any big numbers, and I loved this car. It's a bit bigger. It came out at the same time as the E39 M5 kind of, and it's a bit bigger than that car. It never really drove quite as well, but I loved the just high-speed cruising comfort, well-built feel that this car had. And it was a very reliable AMG car, which a lot of the later ones weren't quite really as much. And it was just great. You could get in it and just go. It was very subtle to look at. It just always ran. It always worked perfectly. And you know, it's funny. I actually bought a Mercedes 500e to replace this car, and the 500e just wasn't as good. I just didn't like it all that much. And now that car has become like an icon, and Porsche built it, blah, blah, blah. I didn't think it was that great, but I loved my E55. And I really wish I hadn't sold that. I sold mine with about 70,000 miles to a guy who had, in Atlanta I was living at the time, he had a long commute. And I run the Carfax every couple months, and it's now got almost 200,000 miles. Same guy's driving it, but obviously it's not as nice and as special as it once was. And I am always kind of on the lookout for another low mileage E55. I loved that car so much. Okay, next up, number 5 favorite car I've ever owned. That would be my 1997 Land Rover Defender. I own this car still. Thankfully, I don't have to have regrets about selling it. This car, it's not even about the driving experience or the look or anything like that. It's about the memories for me with this car. I bought this car just before I got married, and I used it as my wedding getaway car. Like me and my new wife, we drove away from our wedding in the very first moment as a married couple in this car. And then we had it on our honeymoon together and on the beach, and all of our friends have ridden in it and we sing songs, and your hair blows in the wind, and the dog's in it, and he loves it, and people laugh at him as he goes by, and his head is sticking out, and his fluff is blowing around. And that car is just really special for that reason. It's a disastrous car. I mean, it's slow, it's unsafe, it's horrible to drive, it's unreliable. But, you know, sometimes a car is about more than just kind of the sum of what it is and the memories that it has created. And off and on, especially over the last year when I got my G Wagon convertible, I've talked about maybe selling the Defender. You know, it's worth some money now and I could just get out of it. And all my friends unequivocally, no, you can't sell it. You cannot, you know. So I guess I have to keep that one, but it's a special car. Next up, number 4 favorite car I have ever owned. That would be my 1994 Audi RS2 Avant. I bought this car last fall, and the backstory basically is, you know, Audi in the 90s didn't really have a great reputation for anything, and Porsche at the time was going through financial difficulties. So Audi called up Porsche and said, hey, will you build us a car and kind of lend some of your credibility and performance credibility to us, and that'll help us kind of gain a foothold in like the performance space. And so Porsche said, yes, we'll do it, but we can't compete with ourselves. We don't want to build a coupe, so we'll build you a wagon. And that was the RS2. And Porsche built for Audi a station wagon. And I still have people come up to me at Cars and Coffee and say, hey, why do you have Porsche brakes on your Audi? What a stupid little badge you put on there. And it's like, no, that's not really how it works. But anyway, I bought this car last fall. And I've always wanted one ever since I found out about it when I was probably like 18, because they didn't sell in the United States. And I love it. It's the coolest thing. And I love my Ford GT here, but I came to the conclusion last year that I wanted a manual transmission car that I could drive with a bit more frequency, you know, that doesn't quite attract as much attention, that you can kind of leave somewhere, you know. And the RS2 has been great for that. It's a fun, I can take it around town, run errands in it. I still have a nice little stick shift that I enjoy. And it's fast, and it's cool, and it's a really special and desirable car. And I've actually liked it more than I expected. And it hasn't had as many problems as I expected. It's had a couple little things, but that motor that's in it, the 20-valve 5-cylinder, is kind of known for being a pretty reliable engine. And I suspect it'll generally be okay. But I love that car, and I liked it even more than I expected to, frankly. Okay, next up, number 3 favorite car I've ever owned. This is my greatest regret selling this car. So stupid that I sold it. My 1989 Nissan Scargot. So this was a little van that was sold in Japan, and it was intended to look like a snail, and that's why they called it the Scargot. It was a cargo van, but it was also Scargot. Like, so stupid. But I like weird cars, obviously, so I bought this thing, and it was like $8 or $10. It was, you know, it's a cheap car that you could just be cool, you know? And I owned it in Philadelphia where I was living at the time. And I didn't have parking. I had one parking space at my house, and then like I garage several blocks away, and it just wasn't worth paying monthly garage fees to store this ridiculous vehicle I didn't have much purpose for. But now I live in California, I get a little more space. I really want it back. And I think the Scargot is just one of the coolest, stupidest little cars that has ever existed. And I just think they're so cool. These weren't sold in the United States. This one was imported from Japan, as they all were. And a few more of these are starting to come to the United States. It was always a cool car for businesses to promote themselves because it attracts so much attention with its bizarre styling that, you know, you put a wrap on it or whatever. And the guy I sold it to, he used it that way. He used it as a pizza delivery vehicle for his pizza place in Kansas. And he had it for years, and that was, you know, kind of an icon of his pizza place. When we launched Cars and Bids, he actually sold it to a guy who was running for state senate in Pennsylvania, who wrapped it in like his state senate campaign gear, and he used it for that purpose. And I don't know what's become of that. Obviously that election is gone now, and I'm kind of like, you know, if that guy reached out to me, I'd probably be like, yeah, I'll buy it back. But I'm kind of hoping he does. I don't really need that car, but I miss that car. It was definitely one of the most bizarre little cars I've ever owned. And as a lover of weird cars, I loved that car. And frankly, right now I don't have any Japanese cars or Asian cars at all in my group of vehicles. And I think that's a mistake. I really like Asian cars. I've had a lot over my life, Skyline, I've had Toyota, Land Cruiser, but I don't have one now. And I think that might be a cool addition to the fleet. So if one fell into my lap, I would probably consider it. Okay, next up, down to my top 2 favorite cars I've ever owned. This one is obvious to any people who know me, these last 2. But number 2, this thing, my 2005 Ford GT. You know, it's been an interesting story with this car. I bought this car in 3 years ago now almost. And at first I was intimidated by it. And when I say at first, I mean for the first 2 years. It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of everything. Like, you show up anywhere and people freak. And I think that contributed to me being like, okay, this is a really crazy car. It's a really special car. I have to like be careful with it, and I can't take it anywhere, park it anywhere. So I didn't really use it that much for the first 2 years. I was just kind of nervous. I was constantly, every time I drove it, like nervous, I would bump into something or checking blind spots, like always just terrified. To the point where about a year ago, I was thinking about selling it. Not because I didn't like it, but just because like I couldn't really like feel relaxed in it. I had these other cars, I don't really need this. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's a lot of money to tie up in a car. Maybe I just let it go. And something has changed over the last 6 months or a year with this car. I'm not quite sure what, but I've started to kind of come into my own with it and realize, no, you can use it. It's a usable, enjoyable, fun car. And I think I've driven this car more in the last 6 months than I have at any other point. I've now put about 6,500 miles in this car in the last 3 years, which is an insane number for a Ford GT. Nobody is doing that kind of mileage in a Ford GT. And I just took it on a 600-mile round trip. It's a great car. It's the things I like about it. It's the great transmission, one of the all-time best transmissions. It's tremendously reliable. I know that Jeremy Clarkson had a problem with an aftermarket alarm system that he installed, but generally speaking, this car is like no other exotic car. I got a buddy with an F430 that's constantly in the shop dealing with little gremlins and things here and there. A lot of exotic car owners I know, McLaren owners, have a lot of trouble as these cars start to age. Ferrari people have e-gear. They're worried about transmission faults and all these kind of things. This car, nothing. And I mean nothing. There were a couple little tiny issues at the very beginning, but it's been great. And I strongly suspect it'll continue to be great. And I've been totally thrilled with Ford GT. And I think it's the greatest car from this era that I can afford. I would rather have a Carrera GT, but that's 4 times the money and I just don't have it. And this is kind of like the lesser Carrera GT. And for now, I'm okay with that. All right, finally, my #1 favorite car I've ever owned. I mentioned this in a video not all that long ago. My 1999 Mercedes G500 Cabriolet. It's weird, it's ugly, it's stupid, but it's amazing. It's perfect for so many situations. I took my G Wagon convertible all the way up to the Bay Area on a road trip with my wife and my dog. It was great. We drove up there, comfortable, highway speeds, no problem. Can't say that about my Defender. Drove up there, it was perfect. Then we're up there, put the top down to the Pacific Coast Highway. It's a great convertible, and you're looking around and it's so wonderful and nice. Then we found some off-road trails when we're up there, like in the Central Coast in California. We go off-roading through the sequoias with the roof down. But also, in addition to all that, it's a really special car. There's only about 150 of them that have ever been to the United States. And a lot of those have then since been exported back to where they came from. I would guess there's about 120 that are in the United States. So this thing is a really special vehicle. Ugly, heinously ugly, yes, but very special. And the combination of all these things, I've taken my parents around this, my older parents, they get in and out, they got a lot of room, it's surprisingly roomy inside. It's great, and it's been dead reliable. I did have one issue where it had to be towed about 3 months ago because the steering lock broke, but that's a common problem with G-Wagons from this era, and if I had known that it was a common problem, I would have fixed it before it happened. But a lot of people have told me they have these things, and that's the only problem they've ever had, is the broken steering lock. But other than that, it's been dead reliable. That M113 V8 in this vehicle is amazingly strong. It's a great engine, it's a great car, and power top, so you just pull a button and the roof is down. It's really the great car for all situations and all realities. And it's the greatest car I have ever owned, and a fantastic all-around car. I know it's stupid and weird and whatever, but it just perfectly fits what I need from a car. My great disappointment in life is that Mercedes won't make a new one. I think that a new G-Wagon convertible on the newest G-Wagon body style would actually be a really great car, and I would buy it. I know it'd be very expensive. I would buy it to get modern tech, modern safety equipment, a more modern driving experience, more power in a new convertible G-Wagon. Oh, I truly can't think of a better all-around car, despite how ugly it is. But anyway, there you go. That's it. Those are my 7 favorite cars I have ever owned. I'm lucky enough that I still own 4 of these. You know, a lot of people have a lot of regrets about cars that they've sold over the years. I don't really. Except for that Scargot and the E55, I've kept all the cars that I really love, and I hope to continue to do that. But those are my favorites, and I look forward to more someday. For now, I'm on a little bit of a pause trying to buy cars, but those are the best ones I've had out of the 31. So there you go. Here you go. Hey, Noodle, Noodle, here, Noodle, 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 it's a treat. Noodle, it's a treat.